Tootsie is perhaps the most controversial show of this past Broadway season. Many criticized the show for being transphobic, and the whole concept of the show being a man dressing as a woman, completely offensive and outdated, and something that should not belong on Broadway in 2019. However, critics loved it, and it received 10 Tony nominations, including Best Musical, and brought home 2 for Best Book and Best Leading Actor in a Musical. Beetlejuice and Tootsie are interesting comparisons. Beetlejuice started off super weak, but managed to grow and excel, whereas Tootsie managed to start off super strong, but only failed. And the main reason why it's closing is because of financial reasons and too many discount tickets. The show had one of the weakest campaigns I'd ever seen in Broadway history. They kept on changing it at least 3 times, and every time it just didn't work. I also think the whole concept of a man dressing as a woman in 2019 turned off a lot of people. But also many say that the Tony's performance also turned off people, with many saying that the performance was bland, boring, and typical Broadway. There is many reasons why Tootsie was not the success story everyone thought it was going to be. And that's what today's topic is, explaining why Tootsie didn't work on Broadway and whether or not it truly is transphobic or not. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Tootsie was on the regular, making $1 million a week, and advanced sales looked strong. Critics compared it to the producers, with many saying that it was going to win over Hadestown. And yet, this did not happen, and because of this loss and it not winning Best Musical, Tootsie failed in the summer and eventually was playing to less than $1 million a week, and ultimately it closed because of financial reasons. But why did many people see it so much in the beginning, but then after the Tonys, stopped seeing it and it became less successful? Well, one, I think the Tonys' performance hurt it a lot more than it helped. I think the number in itself is a pretty bland, boring, typical Broadway number, and when people saw this, they probably thought, I don't need to go out and rush to see this. I think Tootsie as a movie to musical adaptation seemed out of the blue. It's not a zeitgeist-defining movie, and I definitely do think the creators were thinking it was going to be bigger than it actually was. It's a movie that was super popular in the 80s, and maybe if the musical came out in the early 2000s, it'd be more successful, but I don't think it's in the American culture as it once was. The critics' enthusiastic reviews and the many Tony nominations probably got more people to go and see the show, thinking it was going to be the next big thing. But yet, when they saw it on TV, many were turned away from it. And again, I think it's because many saw it as not that special of a show, and that they would much rather see something like Hadestown than Tootsie. Also, Tootsie appeals to a much more older demographic, and I don't think teenagers or people that you would see at Be More Chill would be into something like Tootsie. And many younger audiences have problems with Tootsie, claiming it is transphobic and outdated, which is the second issue with the show and why it closed. Many younger audiences have claimed that the whole concept of a man dressing up as a woman is offensive and very transphobic. And I have to agree on some levels. See, this is very much a product of its time, a product of the 80s, where woke teens and Twitter did not exist, and the Me Too movement had not even begun. I definitely do think the creators had a challenge about making the show updated for 2019, when the whole concept of it is a man dressing as a woman. Now, here's the thing. Many of the jokes of Tootsie have been taken out of context, and out of context, they're very transphobic, but in context, they're not really. Being a woman is no job for a man is become a very controversial quote and was even on merchandise, and that had to get taken down after outrage on Twitter. In context, the line means is that Michael, a man, shouldn't be getting by in life and getting the job that a woman rightfully should have gotten by pretending to be a woman. Also, the last scene of the show has Michael saying to his friend how he now realizes how it feels to be a woman. And his friend responds by saying that no you don't, you'll never know, and maybe when you've walked 10, 12, 15 miles in women's heels, then you'll know. This is a very profound statement because it really makes Michael think that what he did was not only wrong, but that he'll never understand the complexities and troubles that come with being a woman, especially in such a ravishing industry as the entertainment one. Being a woman is not an easy thing, and Michael quickly realized this throughout the show, dealing with sexism and very sexist comments from men. and yet he comes out with it enlightened, and the show definitely doesn't give him a quote-unquote happy ending. However, I do think that the concept is very flawed, but the message and lesson ultimately is what ties it all together. I think the lessons that Tootsie teaches about being your true authentic self, and also one for men on how to not treat women poorly and be sexist towards them, but also how to empathize with them and realize how hard they have it. And yet, while it has these great messages, I think the concept is just a little too dated, despite it having very significant good lessons about sexism and being a woman in the entertainment industry. Ultimately, I think the creators should have passed on this show and maybe shelved it and maybe reworked it to a more 2019 setting, but yet they didn't. Tootsie has also had one of the worst marketing campaigns I have ever seen. The most recent commercial had people laughing with tears because it was that funny, and yet this didn't work. I feel like Tootsie could have had a lot of good marketing campaigns, and I definitely do think there was a lot of potential, but it was never exploited, and ultimately I think that this marketing campaign is just as important as to why the show failed. If you can't market your show well, people aren't going to come and see it. I think that the landscape of Broadway has changed. We are now in the era where classical musical comedies just don't work like they used to. If this show had premiered around the time of The Producers and Spamalot, it would have excelled. On Twitter, the hashtag Tootsie'sOverParty was pretty popular, and I have to disagree with them. See, the thing is this. I know you guys think the material is outdated. You have a right to feel upset if you want to. Your opinion is your own. But people put their heart, blood, sweat, and tears into this show, and it's highly disrespectful and almost like you're spitting in their faces. Putting on a Broadway show is not easy, and if it was a show that one of you guys liked, you guys would be just as offended. And just think, the cast and crew can see these hashtags, they can see these tweets. You guys can express your opinion, but you have to do it in a respectful way. Because guess what? The Broadway stand community is looked down upon by many people. And for us not to be looked down upon, we cannot do immature stuff like this. A good example of a tweet is saying, "Sorry that Tootsie's closing, didn't agree with the politics, but hope the cast and crew do better and get work." I always thought of the Broadway community as one that's accepting, and in the future we should not bring down shows, but help bring them up. Regardless of whether or not the material is outdated or not, we have to respect the people that were in this show. And listen, if you do it in DMs or private messages, that's all cool. But doing it in a public way has to be done in a very respectful way, but also stating your opinions. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and now know why Tootsie failed. I do think the material is outdated, but I definitely do think you have to look at the show in context to understand what it's saying. And if you would like to have a debate with me, please do in the comments in a respectful way. Hope you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, and peace.